bPáras and seachtain Sharcoiche. Cur sé déistín orm nuair a tháinig mé na himachtaí ar an telebis. Agus caithfidh muid a lig seasamh go láidir in an honsaí seo. On behalf of Sinn Féin, last Concordia, I want to extend my sincerest sympathies to all the victims and the families of last week's dreadful attacks in Paris. And I want to extend to the Ambassador and to the people of Paris and of France our solidarity at this very difficult time. Fáilte mór romh. France and Ireland enjoy good relationships, not least in our revolutionary history and the values which we share. And Irish people, like people throughout the world, watched in shock and revulsion as the brutal events in Paris unfolded. Families were robbed of loved ones, sons, daughters, spouses, colleagues, workmates, parents, siblings. And this weekend saw millions of ordinary people in Paris and France and countless others around the world, including here in Ireland, making a courageous stand against fundamentalism. They were also making a stand against those either from the extreme right or left, whether they are fundamentalists or bigots or racists or homophobes, who seek to impose by violence and intimidation their values on others. But part of the tragedy of the modern world and of what happened in Paris is that many other barbaric acts are ignored by the international community, and particularly by the Western powers. Anshi Ufasaka beyond a hui and I Nasirsa, Ta and Sirsa Tavaktak, the Ahandina. Akta Golior Dini, Irishori San Urid, Hart Van Doon, Nakwil Sirsa Aku, Kahimwij Arj a Horch, or Narealtas Shaw, a Dulchan Sirsa Kansha de Dini. Sadly, the mass slaughter of perhaps 2,000 men, women and children in northern Nigeria by Boko Haram attracted little mainstream media attention. The car bomb attacks last week in Sana'a and Yemen, which killed 35 people, or in Aleppo in Syria, which killed 14, did not attract the same level of media coverage and international condemnation. And while we think of the victims in Paris and Nigeria and Syria, let us also remember that 2,000, mainly civilians, including 500 children, and 13 journalists were killed during the Israeli assault on Gaza last summer. The deaths of journalists, of cartoonists, of satirists in Paris has provoked justifiable outrage, which we share. So too must the deaths of 61 journalists who were killed in duty in Ukraine, Iraq and Syria. There was also some understandable, and probably says a lot about the spirit of the people in France, there was some understandable scepticism in France about some of the condemnations of the Paris attacks from governments whose own record in defence of freedom of the press, or the killing and imprisonment of journalists, or the use of political censorship, which leaves much to be desired. And many French opinion makers quite rightly drew attention to those leaders who could demonstrate their commitment to freedom of speech by opening the prison gates for the journalists they currently hold. However, whatever the colour of our skin, or our religion, or our race, or our gender, there can be no excuse for the actions that occurred in Paris or elsewhere in recent weeks. Whatever or wherever injustice, or oppression, or racism, or attacks take place on religious minorities, or where anti-Semitism, or Islamophobia, or sectarianism exist, they must be confronted and they must be challenged. So too must poverty, injustice, inequality, discrimination and racism. And it is our responsibility, and the Taoiseach did represent the people of this island, it is our responsibility to join with those citizens who courageously took to the streets in defiance of murder and threats, and to make a stand. But that also means going beyond the rhetoric. We do have a duty to understand what happened, to understand the differences which divide us. And I note and I commend very much the French President's warning that last week's horrific attacks should not be an excuse for attacks on Islam or the rights of Muslim people. So we need to be alert to the dangers of fundamentalism of all kinds That means actively working for and investing in processes of education, information, learning and dialogue that can overcome prejudice, and in a spirit of tolerance, of mutual respect and equality can get us to understand the differences which we have. So our sympathy and our solidarity is with the families of those who died and with the people of France. Ar deis, de, Goro, Anonym.
Now, the next speaking slot is shared by Deputies Claire Daly and Rick Wallace. Rick Wallace.